The civil rights movement was a social and political movement that lasted from 1954 until 1968, advocating to end legal segregation and discrimination of the black community. This movement promoted civil disobedience and resistance without engaging in violence. By 1896, the Supreme Court of the United States decided in Plessy v. Ferguson case that segregation was a social construct having no legality in prohibiting it, in that way promoting the doctrine of separate but equal. This doctrine developed in Jim Crow laws that discriminate against African Americans. This practice was more evident in the Deep South, where white people created laws that promoted racism and disenfranchising that oftentimes ended in violent episodes of physical abuse and lynching of colored people. In 1954, with the ruling of the Supreme Court in the Brown v. Board of Education case, the Supreme Court overruled the decision taken more than 50 years prior in Plessy v. Ferguson, ending the doctrine of separate but equal, opening the opportunity for African Americans to attend whites-only schools. Regardless of this, segregation continued mainly in the South. By the end of 1955, with the arrest of Rosa Parks for refusing to give up her seat in a public bus to a white passenger, this action triggered the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. On September 4, 1957, in Little Rock, Arkansas, 9 African American students enrolled in Little Rock Central High School were denied entry to the school by request of Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus. In July 1958, by request of the NAACP Youth Council, a sit-in campaign began at Docum Drugstore in Wichita, Kansas. This campaign tried to end segregation of colored people by the store. It took 3 weeks, but the campaign was a success, making the store change their policy against African Americans. By this time, the civil rights movement was led by many organizers, including Martin Luther King Jr. King began coordinating nonviolent protests and marches in the South. In 1963, King was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama, after coordinating a campaign against racial segregation. During this time in jail, King wrote his letter from Birmingham jail, where he calls to find legal ways to find social change. This was his 13th arrest out of 29. That year, King was a leader in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom event. The march took place on August 28th. As part of this event, King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech in front of Lincoln's Memorial to a crowd of over 250,000 people that attended the event. In his speech, King calls to end racism, bringing economic and civil equality to all people in the United States. In 1965, King was going to take part in a march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, but he couldn't participate due to another commitment. During this march, state police and opponents to the march used violent measures to stop the march, resulting in making public the racism that existed in Alabama. This event was called Bloody Sunday. On April 3, 1968, King delivered his "I've Been to the Mountaintop" address at Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. This was his last speech. That same day, King was shot while in his hotel room balcony. He died an hour later at St. Joseph's Hospital.